You're listening to the Marginally Geeky Show, the epically geeky book club.
Greetings. Welcome to the Marginally Geeky Show. I'm your host for the evening, Eugene Stevens. Tonight I'm joined by Jennifer Hetzel and Ray Andrew. How are y'all doing?
Hi.
I'm here.
We're here.
Good deal. Yeah, it's just like, well, reporting back in for another month at this point. So
much enthusiasm ensues.
Yeah.
No, we're
We're
tired.
good.
Yeah. Still just heading through the whole COVID thing. So this month's book, I've actually it's a shorter book. I've actually listened to it multiple times. Mainly because this is a book that I found energizing, and I hope y'all did too. This month's book was Every Tool's a Hammer by Adam Savage. I've been talking about this book for quite a while. It was one of the ones that I wanted to definitely have on our to-do list because I think it's a great book. I think it's energizing, and it's something that I think we could also talk about on the Creative Geeky Show as well, because he does go into the creative process so much on this book. So that being said, we'll go ahead and start off with our first impressions. Ray, what first impression going through it?
I really I enjoyed his enthusiasm with it. Like you said, it sparked. So I have to say, when I started listening to this, I was just doing some prep work on my shop, and so as I was listening to it, I'm like getting invigorated by it and stuff like that. So it was really nice to listen to. I'm glad he definitely read it himself for the audiobook. That was because then you can hear his excitement and everything. So that was really good too. So yeah, overall enjoyed it, and yeah, we'll get into more bits and
good deal
as we go here.
Jen, what was your first impressions?
So I enjoyed the beginning and the parts that were kind of more overall creativity, being, a maker didn't just mean this specific thing, having a shop and blah, blah, blah. But then by the end of it, that's mostly what it was about, was his shop and his many, many projects. And that's when he kind of started losing me, because I don't get into that stuff. I don't have a shop. I have no desire to build things that way. I don't have the time or the interest. I might have the interest. So I didn't enjoy the last half as much as I did the first half. But overall, yeah, if it was just that first half, I would say, that was a very inspiring book overall.
Like I said, I really enjoyed the book, but you are right. It is interesting in that it is not just one thing. And he even mentions that, he talks about over his career, he has, he's changed, he's grown, he's become different things. And there's, different checkpoints where, he could have gone one of two different ways, and, he's happy for the ways that he's gone. But the book is a very good representation of that, because you're right. At the beginning of the book, it does focus on more so kind of his thoughts on creativity, his history on making, how he became a prop maker, both at ILM and of course one of the co-hosts of Mythbusters. And then there are definite parts in the book, like you said, probably the last half, where a lot of it is literally focusing and discussing specific things in the shop, to include fasteners and glues. And of course, I find that interesting, but I could see how if that's not something that you commonly use, you're probably just like, really? There's a whole chapter about glue. Cool. All right.
And a lot of it was just over my head, and it was just one of those things that's like, yeah, this is good information if you're into this, but it's just not my thing. And I listened to it and I tried to get something out of it, and I got a few little things out of the last few chapters, but it wasn't, just wasn't my thing. That's okay though.
That's perfectly fine. So we'll go ahead and start our discussion here. The first thing, and I'm so glad he started off the book with this, and I love the fact that he does, is he talks about the fact that he goes to these maker fairs, he goes to conventions, he goes to all these different places, and people come up and they're like, excited to meet him, and then they immediately pull in and go, but I don't make anything. I just fill in the blank. And it's like,
Blah, blah,
I
blah.
code, I bake, I whatever it might be. And he's like, you are a maker. Like, don't put yourself down. Do not be afraid to take on that mantle. And one of this, and I think he specifically says it, and every time I listen to it, I think of you, Ray. I know you don't like to call yourself an artist, but you're an artist, dude. Like, just own it. Just own it. Like, I'm a maker. Like, that's I do it. Like, I actually really like the term, but pardon me. But yeah, I think he specifically, brings it up, and I'm just like, he's so right. Just because your medium is code or dough or something, you know what I'm saying? Like, that doesn't mean you're not making something. You're not bringing something into the world that wasn't there, that has some of your personality and your ideas in it. So, sorry, I gotta get a drink here.
I forgive you. We'll pause for a moment and just reflect on the words that you've said.
Oh Lord, no! I was hoping you were going to jump in. So,
I think that's a good point, though, when he talks about you can be a maker with almost anything you do, and I liked his comment about being like seriously curious, because I can definitely relate to that. Like, I about everything all the time, and I'm really bad about starting and things and never finishing them, and wanting to take on new hobbies. But that was one of my big takeaways in the beginning, was just, oh, there's other people like me. That there's a name for this. Serially curious.
I love that too. Listening to him talk about how he's like, and I mean, granted, I think most people would, especially on some things, would say, well, no, you're definitely like a master, if not right there at being mastery level. But he's like, I can't master anything because I do everything. And I mean, granted, he obviously has a natural ability, for it and an affinity for it. But I mean, that's one of the things that I have found hard about me, is because, like, it's like, well, take the podcast for example. If I like focused all of my time, energy, and effort into podcasting, this would probably be a completely different thing. Like, we would probably have a lot more listeners, we'd have a lot more stuff going into it. But I'm just like, I don't want to do that, because this is an interest and I love it and I enjoy doing it. But I'm like, I'm looking at my desk here and I literally got like 3 or 4 different projects going on here, and I'm just like, I'll never master any one of these, but that's okay. Like, I enjoy doing them.
He says that he has more ideas than time, and that's another thing. I was like, yeah. Yep. Like, I have we talked about this in the last episode of Creatively Geeky, like all these things that we want to get to that we haven't had the time or the energy or whatever to do. So, how do you figure that out? It's just prioritizing, I guess, and not sleeping and
become a Bob.
Yeah. It's one of those, and granted, and he does say he's extremely lucky to be in the field of work that he's in, so that he can, he has time, like, he spends his day doing that stuff, whereas most of us have a day job, so we have to, kind of fit it in when we can. So, so one of the things go on.
I was just going to say, I would have been interested in doing a lot of the things he talks about, but to me, it always comes down to a time to interest ratio. So am I interested enough to give up the time for it, and vice versa? And, some of the stuff like prop making and armor building, that would be great, but I'm just not interested enough to do those specific projects. And I'm sure there's things that, y'all are the same way. Like, oh, that'd be nice to know, but I'm not giving up the time that's needed. Because he talks about like making mistakes and how, you've got to do things several iterations and then you get it finally. But I'm like, who wants to do that? That's just too much work.
I have had to, especially with this project, especially with these making of these boards, like literally, I don't know what I'm going to do with these. I knew this was not going to be the final project, but it was like I've got to make at least one to make sure I kind of know what I'm doing. Um, so
Make it
I
a
literally thought about that as I was making this because I was just like, all right, Adam's right. I know this is not going to be the final product. This is an iteration. But you know what?
Make
Damn
it
it,
out
just
of
do it.
cardboard.
And okay, and literally that was the next thing on my notes was cardboard. And part of me is like, I'm getting all this cardboard together and I'm taking it to the recycling. I'm just like, should I be holding on to this for things? But I'm like, because the boys will occasionally want like the big box will come in. They're like, can we use the big box? And they'll want to play with it for a while. And then they kind of forget about it. And then I have to break it down eventually or whatever. So, but I love the idea that he's like, and it's funny because I watch his tested channel and he's very honest. Like everything he said in the book, he lives it. Like he's like, okay, so for this one day build, we're going to do this. And the first thing I'm going to do is take poster board or cardboard and we're going to do a rough draft and then we'll actually go start sawing stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I think all kids though, at some point just like have taken a cardboard box and made something out of it, a race car or a spaceship or
What's
something.
funny is during that whole chapter, I was actually breaking down cardboard boxes because I'm going to use them in my garden of all places. But yeah, I was like, yeah, cardboard really is pretty awesome. There's so many utilitarian uses for it.
Yep. I mean, honestly, like I'm thinking about it now. Like I've got pictures on my Instagram. If you go way back, it was raining and stuff, and the boys couldn't go outside. So I had taken cardboard boxes and took a bunch of duct tape and made race cars out of them. And like the first costumes I made for them, the Thomas, the tank engine, and Percy, that was made out of cardboard, and they held up for several years. So I mean, I've dabbled in playing with cardboard, to make stuff, and it is definitely easier than a lot of other things that I've been messing with now. So
I had a friend who took a cardboard box and styrofoam and tape, clear masking or duct tape, and made a shelter for a cat, like a stray cat that she fed in the winter.
nice.
And it was completely waterproof because of the tape, but it was like, that is some, ingenuity. Also, like, you could have just bought one probably for less time and money, but it's still creative. Very
It's so handy, and like he demonstrates to you, like he talks about it, it's so much stronger than what you think it is, right? Like it's I've made multiple swords for Quinn, shields and all that other stuff too. Just a little bit of paint, a little bit of fun, and a little bit of ingenuity, and you've got some really fun stuff out of it, right? So yeah, it's definitely one of the best beginner maker stuff out there. So
Absolutely. Yeah, and like I said, I love the fact that he talks about it so much and so enthusiastically too. He's like cardboard is fantastic, guys. Don't turn your nose up at it. So, okay, so you kind of talked about cosplay a little bit, and he does talk about that. I love the stories that he tells about how cosplay empowered him, and of course, it being Adam Savage, the fact that one of the first things that he made was a full suit of armor with his dad.
He passed out in it at school.
And passed out, like you said, at school because he was so hot. I can just totally see that.
I can see myself doing something like that.
So I didn't write this down, and now that I'm thinking about it, I'm gonna veer off here real quick. We can come back to the whole cosplay thing, but and this is kind of a question for Ray. Do you ever feel like you're not giving your kids? I mean, granted, I don't know how creative your kids are. My boys right now are firmly like what they want to do is play on their iPads, and they have tons of Legos, and like if when there is a big box, occasionally we'll be like, yeah, sure, you can have the big box, and they'll go do stuff with it or whatever. And do you ever feel like you're not giving the kids opportunity to explore their creative side, or do you feel like you're giving it, they're just not taking it?
So we got lucky with Logan. So I remember when she was like 4, maybe 5. We got her a great big cardboard castle. That, here you go, color it. And so she got to color any way she wanted. And so she was, right into that. And she still draws to this day. She still loves drawing. It's one of her things that she really enjoys to like calm down and just kind of get through it. So for her, that's what she loves doing. I'm really excited because Quinn loves to build stuff. Like, he loves making stuff. He got into robotics at his last school. So and the other thing too is if the kids want to, if they wanted to get into something where they're making things, I'll show them different techniques. I'll show them those things that I've learned already. So I'm trying to pass on that knowledge to them. I got frustrated a couple times where they had no part in it. But I didn't have the most creative parents. They did what they could, but it wasn't really top quality, if you know what I mean. So when Quinn wanted to be like a Skylander, I got leather and we got stuff made together and stuff. So I've been excited by that stuff. I think especially Halloween, we get a lot of creativity juices out, and I've been lucky that the kids buy into that stuff. So.
See, I'm hoping that, because here's the thing, they do like to build stuff and be creative in Minecraft. They do like to do creative things like that in some of the games. I'm part of me is like, well, if they do it just virtually.
Yeah, there's a point where it's like, here you go, and I gotta step away, which is much like life in general, I guess. So there's that, but yeah.
Well, in Lego Movie where the dad does the kids playing with it because they won't build it right.
That's right. That's why there's Craggle.
Craggle.
Yeah, that's and he talks about that about his inability, or he's had to really work at becoming a boss because he's like, well, I can do this faster. Why don't I just gonna do this, ahead of time? And I have to say, I've definitely run into that. I have not had many, at least not officially in a work situation, where I have like been put in charge of people, and I have run into that. I'm just like, man, it would be so much easier if I could just get this done. So
I'm at that point right now in my job where I've had quite a few people. Like, I've been doing the job that I'm doing since 2006. So I've been in this particular job, and I've taught it to a bunch of different people as well. And so now there's been a couple of new people come in, and they're learning and they're doing things. And so I've created a couple of PDFs, which are all printed out, and it's a basic how-to. Here's your picture. Here's this. Here's this. Okay, next page. Here's this. Here's and I've done that for them so that but I'm forcing them to do it. And it's like you said, it's so much easier to just let them, or, I'll take it over and just do it for them. But I'm thankful that a couple of them are like, no, I need to learn how to do this now.
Yeah. You learn by making mistakes too. So it takes longer, but that's how you learn.
The other thing that I find that's really good is if they teach somebody else how to do it. And
absolutely.
That is your best teacher right there. So
absolutely. Nothing makes you learn something, unless you want to look like an idiot. Nothing makes you learn something better than having to teach it. So, because believe me, even though there was I was pretty comfortable about the things that I knew when I would teach like a course like at Geek Fest or whatever. It was like, all right, but what if someone asks about this? I need to go ahead and do a little do a little
Yeah.
more research, get a little more
Yeah.
knowledge here. So
Imposter syndrome.
yeah, no joke.
I
So
don't know enough about this.
I'm gonna
Be an
walk in there
expert
and
every facet. Yeah.
someone's gonna be like, "Why are you here?" So, but yeah, some of the cosplay stuff, and he talks about like, especially like he's got a couple of like key props that are just like he keeps trying to get that absolute best version of, and like the stuff that he talks about, that last version of that blaster from Blade Runner. Like the fact that he's like, I finally broke down and bought the actual guns that the parts go into. And he's like, this was like hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. So I have to get it right. So I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever get to quite that point. Like I'm getting really like I'm about to go down another rabbit hole with my proton pack because I'm about to hit like another level to that, but I'm getting to the point it's like I'm almost as top of the line as you can go without like, okay, now I want all aluminum parts, and I'm just like, no, I can't do that. So number one, it would weigh a ton.
There's one of the guys at work and I have been discussing it for a while that we'd really like to build a stormtrooper's entire outfit and
Right.
join the 501st.
501st,
yeah.
So I mean that would be amazing. I've thought about doing like a Spaceballs one instead, just to be that guy.
Oh yes.
Nice. And see, I've seen where people have done, and they've even got like the patterns and stuff out there that you can buy in some cases for free on like how to do the stormtrooper armor and stuff, and lots of different versions like out of EVA foam. And I'm just like, I think I could do that, but it's like if I'm going to put all that time, effort, and energy into it, maybe I should do it the quote unquote the right way so that I could get into the 501st, because it'd be like, wow, I spent 6 months making that and it's awesome, but I can't get in. So yeah, I feel you on that one. One of the things he talks about is being afraid, and he talks about specifically this ideology of teaching, failure is fine, failure is okay, and he's like, that's not real failure. That's a learning process. He's like, failure is like getting drunk and not going to your kid's birthday party.
Yeah.
That's failure.
Yeah.
He's like, you tried at something and it didn't work out. Okay, well, you learn and you try it again. And he tells this story about when he was helping make a student film and he just totally messed that process up. Yeah. And asking for help. That was the other thing. He's like, I really had to. He's like, I never looked down on people who asked for my help, but I always had a hard time doing it myself.
Yeah.
So, and I will say,
same way.
I feel the same way. I'm like, if someone's asking me for help, I'm like, no, I'm not going to look down on you for that. You're asking for help. Thank you for that. But whenever I have to do it, sometimes I'm just like, well, do I really want to ask? Maybe I can figure this out myself.
Yeah.
We're always so much harder on ourselves, though.
Absolutely.
Meaner to ourselves. Yeah.
So that actually reminded me of a YouTube video, and I think I've talked about it on at least Epically Geeky, where it's the Mario effect, right? Where you learn a process, and by learning the process and failing at that process, you learn how to get better at it. Mm-hmm. That's the only way you learn from anything, right? So it's definitely changing the words from "I didn't fail, I've learned something," and I like that. So
yeah, kind of gamifying it, essentially. Yep.
But on the flip side, mistakes take time away from other things. So when he did say like, yeah, sometimes you just got to make something 5 times and it's going to break, and that's how it's going to be. And I'm just like, well, I don't have the time for that. So it all comes down to time for me.
Yeah. Well, like for example, so once again, going back to this project, I made these, I knew this was going to be the final project, but I now know what I need to at least start learning. And like, I still have not sent this in. I'm still refining it because I do want the second version to be the final version. So I'm trying to think, through this as much as I possibly can. But in some cases you have to have that first version in hand to go, okay, well, I never thought about this, or I never looked at it this way, or whatever. So,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So we brought it up. You brought it up at the beginning. Mechanical fasteners and glue. I love the fact that he's just like, mechanical fasteners are so much better. Yes, they are. But just sometimes you just gotta slap glue on it, but you gotta be careful. And everything that he mentioned, I totally agreed with. I'm just like almost every single all-purpose glue. I'm just like, this is garbage. This is not doing what I want it to do.
I will say,
who knew how many types of glue there were?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. I will say though, wood glue is one hell of a thing for wood. Like, it's incredible.
I learned the wonders of wood glue back in 8th grade in my wood shop class, because my wood shop teacher was specifically told us, he's like, okay, y'all don't understand, like, once this is glued and dried, like, when you break it, it's going to break somewhere else. It will not break here. And boy, was he right.
Yeah.
So,
So other fasteners are pretty awesome, and yeah, that's cool. But a screw is not going to hold that particular joint nearly as well as glue. So.
Yeah. Yeah, wood glue is fantastic, and the fact that you can use wood glue on cardboard and like it's not going to let go there either, because it's basically just thin trees. That's fantastic as well.
Yeah.
But I have become extremely. I love CA glues, especially with a kicker on it, just because used to you put it on there and you just hold it, and now it's just like either spray it or take a little of that kicker, put it on there, and it's like, oh look, instantly done. And like for the most part, like the plastics that I use in my 3D printing, like, it does not let go. It does. You have to really convince it to let go. So, and usually permanent damage along with that. One of the things that he points out is, there's a wonderful story about him getting his first Makita drill, his first Makita cordless drill. And he's like, one of the life lessons, and he even says, if I could go back and tell my younger self something, it would be use more cooling fluid. And he's just like, it's just a life lesson, because at any time you need to stop.
I love that story.
Take a moment, use more cooling fluid. Whatever it might be, the decision making, the argument you're having, just take a moment, think about it for a second, do it the right way.
So that really that hit home for me when I was doing the tile in the kitchen, the old place, and I had to use a diamond drill to get through it. And I did a lot of research at first. I'm like, okay, what's the big thing? And they all said, put a lot of water in that joint, because otherwise it's gonna crack if you don't. And I'm so glad that I took the time and I did that right, because otherwise, then you've got a broken tile and it's already up, and you can't replace it easily, right? You're now talking about breaking it all off and starting again. So thankfully it worked out, and I will admit I may have taken twice as long as I should have, but it worked. So.
But you saved time in the long run, because you prepped well, which is something else he talks about, is taking the time up front to get ready.
And he talks about it too, having the right tools in the right area. And that for me is what I struggle with at times, because I'm at the end of the day, if I'm done, I just kind of throw everything in a box and
Yep. See, I still don't have okay, we'll go ahead and jump into that.
Sorry.
I still don't. No, it's fine. It's great. I still don't really have a work area per se, at least not the way that I want it. Like it's gotten better. So like, for example, if I need to solder something, I can move stuff off here. I have my soldering stuff down here that's in like a box or whatever. So at least it's all in one place. It's easy to get to. But like he tells this story about how Jamie Heineman from Mythbusters, like, they worked in his shop for the show, and anytime he needed a hammer, he had to walk all the way across the shop to get a hammer. And he's like, why would you not have a hammer in all of these different locations where you would use a hammer? And he explains the fact that Jamie probably uses that. Two reasons. Jamie probably uses that time to think about what the next step is, so it gives him time to think. But also, he was a farm boy and he didn't have anything, so it's like, all right, well, I have a hammer. Check. I don't need another hammer. I have one. There it is. I find myself leaning a little more towards Adam in that respect. So, like, for example, I have two 3D printers back over here behind me on my right, and then I have my third 3D printer sitting here to my left. And the two things that I am constantly using are a pair of snips and Elmer's disappearing purple glue, because that's what I use to put down on the surface for it to stick to that first layer. And even though it's only 3 or 4 steps away, I have I have snips at both locations. I have glue at both locations, because it's like, why do I need to keep stopping what I'm doing, interrupting my process to go across the room, grab it, bring it over here, use it, and then take it back? I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. So I'm slowly but surely kind of coming around to that ideology. I think once I do finally have a official shop area, I will probably have multiple versions of tools, just because I hate having to stop what I'm doing to go find a tool to do the next step. It's like it breaks my concentration, and it breaks my flow, honestly. So,
yeah. And the other thing that goes along with that too is having the correct tool, because you can, like he said, any tool can be a hammer, but
yes,
the right tool just makes it so much easier.
Yes, it is. I cannot tell you how many times it's like, and I'm trying to, I'm understanding this more as I become an adult. If I have a project coming up and it's like, oh, well, what tool should you get? And it's like, well, you might need this, this, and this. And it's like, well, I have something close to that. I should be able to use that. And I'm just like, no, buy the fucking tool. Because even though you have something like it, it's not going to get the job done. So, yeah. But the one of the next things I was going to bring up was, oh, come on now, face ID here. Here we go. Time offsetting expertise. I love this. I don't want to say theory, but I love the way he put it, that if you don't have expertise in something, taking your time can help offset that greatly. And yeah, he's right. Like, there are several things. Now, granted, sometimes I'm like, I'm just procrastinating. I don't want to do this because I'm afraid I'm going to screw it up. But I will tend to take my time and be like, all right, well, maybe I should watch one more YouTube video on how to do this before I jump into it, just to make sure I kind of know what to expect. So, yeah. And then I find, the things that I've learned to do that I've gotten decent at, I'm like, oh yeah, just knock it out real quick. So do y'all find that to be the same case?
Pretty much.
Yeah. If I can force myself to slow down enough to research, which as you get older, you realize, like we were talking about, you save time in the long run if you just do it right the first time.
Oh my God.
Save money.
Well, and that kind of goes along with the whole start with the part that you hate the most, right? For me, that's I'll do the research on the part that I hate the most to get it over with. I kind of agree with that. That way you're excited about the next part. So, yeah.
Okay, so we mentioned it on a previous show. I think it was the creative show. One of the things that he learned and explained that I absolutely adore is the list making that he learned at ILM.
I was gonna say, you haven't brought up lists.
Oh my God! Number one,
a huge
lists are fantastic, but I love the system that he explains of having the little box, and you fill in the box halfway if you've started the project but it's not done, and you fill in the box all the way when it's done. And that way, when you're not crossing out stuff, you can go back and reference that information if you ever need it again. And I'm like, yes, absolutely, because I've had projects I've had to go back and look at information. I'm like, thank God I kept that information. So
I've always had something very similar to that. And then at work we have something very similar to that, where it's a mandatory process. If we were using certain procedures, they call it the circle slash. So you always circle where you've left off. You do that part, you slash to say it's complete, and then you move on to the next part. Circle it before you start reading it, and then you start reading that part. So, and then you initial as well to for the person to come behind to say yes, I initial to say that these are complete. So. I've always liked that, and I've been using more and more of that for other things that we do too. So, yeah.
I'm glad to hear that a nuclear power facility has such a stringent process, because like I would hope you guys do something that meticulous.
Oh yeah, no, they're very strict on that. It's there are a lot of procedures as well that you have to have the procedure in hand while you're doing it, and you're physically looking over everything. Okay, and then you go and do it, and then done, and then it's verified by somebody else to say it's done, and then you go to the next step. So
redundancy.
Going back, he also talks about specialty tools, and like the blade that he talks about is interesting. The one that he uses to cut plastic. What was it? Anyway, he has a special blade for certain types of plastics. But I had already known and heard about growing up with my mom, who used to cut hair and used to do a little sewing, that there are special scissors for certain situations, and you do not use those scissors for anything else.
Fabric scissors.
Fabric scissors, and people who cut hair will tell you the same thing. You do not use those scissors for anything else.
No, they're very delicate. Yeah.
Yes, they are. Yeah, but learning, some that kind of goes back to, he's talking about, you look at some of these special tools and you're like, well, why am I buying this one tool that I may only use a couple of times? But like we said, sometimes that special tool makes all the difference. Like the wire strippers, the specific wire strippers that I got for Christmas. Oh my God, they make so much difference. Yes, I could technically use a pair of scissors. Yes, I could use the older style wire strippers I had, but my God, it makes life so much easier.
Teeth.
Yes. So, do y'all have any tools?
I was gonna say I have a pretty complete starter tool set and a few other things that I've built on over the years. But man, when I need that very specific star screwdriver or whatever the fuck I need for one specific project, I call my dad, and he's got everything, because he's one of those 6 tool cabinets full of the most random shit, but when you need it, he's got it.
Right. Yep.
And it is nice to be able to call.
Yeah.
Yeah, like especially like some of those star bits like you were talking about, it's like, if you get something that's close, it's like, okay, I guess I can make this work. Do I really want to drive all the way to Lowe's to buy the part? And most of the time, about half an hour later, you're like, I should have just done it.
Strip your screwdriver.
Yeah.
Because then you'll have to replace that thing, and good luck finding that exact one.
Yeah. He talks about, and we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, how your shop should reflect the maker. And like I said, that's one of those things that I've already started doing is, I like to have multiple tools there or whatever. But I kept thinking about what he was talking about, how he thinks shelves are where tools go to die. Drawers are where tools go to die. And I understand that to a certain extent. I hate, unless it's a large item, I hate deep drawers, because shit just gets piled on top of it. And I love those nice thin drawers. And the fact that he talks about, and he's just like, it's just giddy when you get to take that foam and you cut out the exact shape of that tool. And I'm just like, yes, that is what I want one day. That sounds stupid, but my God, that sounds like awesome.
Just make sure that you get the different blocks that like can go. It's a puzzle piece that you can replace that one specific piece for when you get a new tool, because
yeah, See, that would be my thing. Was I would eventually add something else to it and be like, well, crap.
How does it work?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay. So some of the stories that he told about ILM and working at ILM and Mythbusters. Was there anything in particular that kind of stood out to y'all?
Maybe not specifically about that, but I will say the one thing that stuck out to me, and I quickly mentioned it, it's the cleaning up the shop at the end of the day. Make sure you add time to cleaning up the shop. And it's so true, and I'm guilty of it, where it's like, do you know what? Today's just done, and turn the lights out, and away I go. And then, but he even says, like, then you get up in the morning, and you go, fuck, now I got to clean up.
Yep.
And then you're not in the process of making anymore. Yeah, always add that time at the end of the day if you can.
Look out for future Jennifer or Ray or Eugene.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. And I have done that. He even talks about, he tells that story about how he, took the tube and he wrapped the Christmas lights around it, and future Adam was so excited with past Adam. And I have literally done that. I've literally done something Christmas light wise and left a note for myself. And when I got down the stuff next year, it literally said, future Eugene, this is past Eugene. I've done the following. You're welcome. And of course, my wife thinks I'm a big dork.
Coat hangers work really well for slides. Wrapping around that.
Well, I specifically started buying those. They're super cheap. They're kind of shaped like a big H or whatever. I started buying those because we used to do the icicle Christmas lights, and that was just the best way that you could wrap them so they weren't all over the place. But yeah, like those are little things that you find out. When you become an adult, you're just like, there's got to be an easier way to deal with this shit.
Life hack.
Hell yes.
One of the things that I liked about, and I don't know if it was at ILM or just his work in general, when he talked about just like how generous people were in sharing their knowledge and ideas, and other than when he was in New York, apparently they were assholes. But I love the idea that creatives are so generous and helpful, and that I think that's important for all of us to remember. Like we've all benefited from other people's expertise and time and help, so try to give back in whatever way you can, and share your knowledge and mentor people.
And see, he's not the first person I've ever heard say that. There's a cosplayer I follow. He goes by the name Evil Ted. He gives away stuff, but I mean, he also has classes and stuff that he sells. But he was a professional prop maker, and I've heard him tell stories. He's like, yeah, he goes, this is the way the industry was. He said, and honestly, like when I started sharing some of this information, I had people like call me up and were just like, what are you doing? You are going to make it so that you can no longer get a job, and you're going to make it so I can't get a job. Stop it. Mm-hmm. And of course, thank God that didn't stick, and more people came to the realization that I can share my knowledge, you can share your knowledge, I can sharpen my tools using your knowledge, and vice versa, and we can all become better as a result of it.
Yeah.
Open source is better. Yeah.
That touches on a point that I remember as well. I can't remember where it is in the book because it's been a while since I've listened to it. But there was a part where he was talking about looking up at the expert, and the expert, like, just a little shake of his head, like, yeah, set that up right yet. And so he would adjust it and then look up and, all right, now you got it done there.
He's like, that little nod was the most gratifying.
Yeah.
So it's still a transfer of knowledge, right? Even though it's subtle, and even though it's like, okay, you let them fail enough to learn it, but I did like that little transfer of knowledge there too.
Yeah, I thought that was, and I can totally see, some older guy that's been doing it forever. He is not going to compliment you come hell or high water, but the highest thing you're ever going to get is just a single nod, and it's like, yes, I did it right.
He'll shake his head, roll his eyes at you.
Yeah. One of the things that I also liked about the book, and I knew you would probably, I was pretty sure you loved about the book, Jen, is the sense of humor in it, especially when it comes to things like the title of the chapters, Knowing with My Homies.
Yeah.
That I'm just like, this is our people.
Yeah, his puns were great.
So
Something that I thought was really cool at the beginning, he talks about how he was obsessive about everything and he felt like he had to stifle it. And I think we can all relate to that because geeks are notoriously obsessive about whatever they geek out over.
mhm.
And I think we've all become, people who don't really care what other people think and will obsess openly and not be overly embarrassed about it. But were there ever times when y'all, tried to stifle that or felt like, oh man, I can't let people know that I'm into this?
For a long time, I wouldn't let myself enjoy certain things. Absolutely. And it's, part of my growing up, part of the area that I grew up in. Arts things were definitely were not supported. You were not. You weren't a boy if you liked certain things.
Mhm.
I know
Toxic masculinity.
absolutely was. So I was definitely forced down more the sports road. That being said, as much as I love sports, I'm thankful enough that we put Quinn into dance. He really enjoyed it when he was a little kid. So I'm glad that the culture is definitely changing, where you're allowed to be more of who you are, and you don't have to be shoved into everything.
Yeah. See, I found there were some things that, like, specifically, I had friends that were in all different groups in high school, and I found it was like, okay, well, there are certain things that I can share with certain people,
Yeah.
but it's not. I definitely did not, and I didn't even identify. I mean, looking back, yeah, I was a big geek. I was also a big dork, but I also
We've
didn't
seen your
identify that
pictures.
way. Yes, but it was like I don't. There were certain people that I would talk about certain things with, but other people was like, no, absolutely,
Yeah.
no, you don't talk about how you still watch cartoons or
Yeah.
you really think it would be cool to dress up as something. That would be, what, are you weird? Like, are you a little kid? What's wrong with you? So, and of course now I'm just like, I think for the most part, working at a high school, overhearing the kids, they're definitely more open with their clicks. And I think it's also the fact that because of the internet, if they are into something, now granted, there's 20, granted, we're only at half capacity right now. But last year we had 2,400 kids walking around this one campus. So yeah, there was a definite group. Like there may have only been 4 or 5 of them were, but we had like an anime club. We had, different clubs for all these different things. And I was just like, there's no way in hell that would have flew, back when I was in high school. So, because otherwise you're just asking to get ridiculed and everything else. So, one of the other things that really struck me about the book was, he's very good at, giving credit where credit is due.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm sure I probably misheard this, or hell, I may have read it somewhere that was just making up BS. But I had heard that him and Jamie Hyneman weren't necessarily on the best of terms whenever the show ended.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe that was the case, but he has nothing but high praise for the man. And specifically, he's like, yes, we butted heads and we had issues and stuff. He goes, but he taught me so much stuff and was not afraid, didn't think it was a problem to teach people. He's like, he openly encouraged me to try to learn stuff or whatever. And it definitely, even if they're not necessarily like, I don't think they're ever going to be like best of friends, but I definitely kind of see Jamie in a little bit different light. Like, it's like, okay, well, even though the dude comes across super gruff and everything else, and he probably really is like that in life.
Yeah.
He obviously is a good dude because, he was all about, encouraging the people who worked, for him and with him to do their best and to learn and try to expand. So, I really like that part. And then of course, I love the fact that he reached out to some of his friends and he's like, if you could, what one thing would you tell people? And, some of it was big picture stuff and some of it was minute stuff. Like, what's his name from Parks and Rec? The woodworker.
Nick Offerman.
Nick Offerman. He's like this one little sheet of metal that you can use to plane wood, and just like, cool. That's the one thing you wanted to share. Like that was like the most important thing. So, well, does anyone have anything else that they want to share about the book?
As quick of a reason. So I will say this: it was a quick read.
Yes.
And when it got to the end, I was like, oh, that's it. I want more.
Yeah, I can agree.
He's got other books, right?
No, this is the only one he's written.
Oh, I thought he had other books.
So, no,
he's got podcast, right?
Yeah, I think because he even specifically mentions, he's like, man, this was hard. This is one of the hardest things I've ever done. So, oh,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm assuming it also was very time consuming. So I don't know if he'll be doing anymore unless he can figure out a better way to do it. I mean, I know there are people who like will dictate books and then go back and edit them or whatever. So, but the man's constantly making, like, if you subscribe to his YouTube channel, it's tested. He's constantly doing stuff. So.
Oh yeah, when he talked about when they were filming, they filmed 200 days out of the year, and I was like, when the fuck did you make anything during that 10 or 12 years? Like, and he admitted, like, I didn't hardly have any time to do anything. That's why things took me like 4 and 5 years. But God, can you imagine like never being home?
I mean, if Discovery's like, hey, we're going to pay you good money, it's like, well, get the work done now. Cause who knows? Of course they did 17 seasons or something like that. Like it went on a long time.
Yeah.
So,
the only thing I would add is the part where he says that, you know, new tools can be intimidating, and I know we all have those things. Hashtag airbrush.
Exactly what I was about to say. Hashtag airbrush.
I may not have tools, but I have specific projects that are intimidating. So I, was like, all right, yeah, I know, just do it, right? So if you're listening and you have a tool or an idea in mind that's intimidating to you, just get on it.
Yeah, just try it.
Just start on it, and then you'll see it's probably not nearly as bad as you thought.
Yeah, because every time I watch a YouTube video where someone talks about airbrushing, especially if it's a how-to one, they're just like, "This totally intimidated me too. Just give it a shot. Like, just try it."
Yep.
So, yeah, I do really plan on trying it. It's just there are other projects I need to knock out first. So,
Gene, just blow for it.
I think we're done now.
Yeah, I think we are. So so final thoughts on the book.
Air blow. Yeah.
Yes, I got it. Final thoughts on the book. Like, I'm with you, Ray. I kind of wish there was more. Yeah. But I did really enjoy it, and it's one of those things I'm like, I can probably tear all the way through it, in an afternoon, because I also listen to it at double speed. But like it's very positive. I always feel very positive listening to it. It's one of those books that I've probably listened to 3 or 4 times now, because it's like, man, I really kind of need a boost to my creativity, and this is a good way to do that. So definitely, if you are a creative person, definite recommendation, take a listen to it. So anything else you want to throw in there?
Really enjoyed it. Thankful. Yeah, it was good. It came to me at the right time.
Yeah. I think if you need that extra kick to start something or to get organized, this is a good book for you, especially if you're a maker, like with tools, heavy tools, and you like, building things and cosplaying. Yeah, this is your deal.
Absolutely. Well, that is our show for the month, ladies and gentlemen. Our next book is a long-awaited one. It is Heaven's River, which is the 4th book in the Bobiverse series from Dennis E. Taylor. Ray is about halfway through it. I'm actually starting it tomorrow.
Hasn't Sean finished it or something?
Yep, Sean.
Yeah, Sean has finished it. I'm sure he's probably chomping at the bit to talk to us about it. So But that will be our next book that we read and discuss for next month. So if you have not, if you enjoyed the other 3 books, so far I haven't seen anyone like just flat out say, "Oh my God, he ruined it." Like everyone's just, most of the comments I keep seeing is, "All right, so when's the next one?"
So without getting spoilery, you definitely you feel like you're listening to old friends. There's that aspect to it. So
nice.
Yeah.
I can't wait to start it tomorrow. So
I'm just gonna need y'all to write me a Bob timeline for each one, because I swear there's just too many and I don't remember.
We'll listen to our previous.
Yeah, I guess I could do that, but we didn't really do a good job of telling like
No, that's true.
you know, Bob's story. But
well, the problem is keeping track of each one is so hard. Like I might could go back through and send you the notes that I had on the previous one. So, but yeah, keeping track of all the Bobs is hard.
Eugene writes notes.
Shut up. I don't write as many as I used to.
I know. I wrote a list for this show. When I'd hear something, I'd jot it down. So, you know.
Yep, same here. Yep, got my list right here. It's all on my phone. So
I usually just send Eugene ideas.
Oh, I did have one more thing. That makes me think of it. Do you guys draw your stuff out like he talked about drawing everything? I know you probably do, Ray, but like when you have an idea for something you want to create, you draw it all out on paper?
If I have to be very specific about it, or if it is super complex, yes. If not, like if I'm designing something in 3D, I can usually visualize it in my head and I'm pretty good about it. But like, for example, I'm working on a side project right now with some electronics that I don't quite understand. So of course I'm like, nope, got to draw that mess out. I had to do some conversions on a thing I was designing, and I couldn't quite keep all the conversions in my head, so I had to draw that mess out. So the answer is yes. So
yeah. No, I draw it all out too, especially if it's woodworking or anything like that. I draw it all out. I put the measurements all in. That way I can remember, okay, I got to take a 1/2 inch off this one and this one because I'm doing 2x4 and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, it's so helpful.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't really sketch things out to kind of design the shape of it. But when it, like, if there's specific measurements I have to hit, oh, yeah, like, you almost have to draw it out to get the measurements on there to keep up with them, because otherwise you have to keep constantly double checking yourself and going back. Well, how big was that? How big was that? Crap. And eventually you're going to write it down, or you're just going to end up with a mess.
Yeah.
So, well, what else have you been reading?
I was just curious.
Sorry.
Yeah, I find it really helpful. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What else have you been reading, Ray? Or have you been reading anything else?
Oh yeah. So I finished Ishmael's Journey there in all of his books.
Okay.
So those, was there 8 books there? They're all pretty short. I think it's
9.
8. 9? There's 9.
Right?
Anyway. Quarter, half, full, captain, double, owner, and then the 3. Yeah, so 9.
So 9 books, yeah.
That whole series is done. And I'm halfway through Heaven's River, and I have to say that my hour commute to work has been very helpful in getting through audiobooks.
I bet it has.
Yeah. I'm killing 2 hours at least a day, which is nice. So, no.
Good deal. Jen, have you been reading anything else?
Hell no. I barely got through this book. Like, I was right up until like an hour before the show that I finished it. And you know what? This is the first book for that.
You
kind of cut out there. You said this is the first book you finished what?
In time for the show in like 3 or 4 months.
Oh, yeah.
Just as your internet gave out.
Yeah, it's been doing that all night. I'm over it.
So, I honestly, I I've been trying to listen to a lot of stuff, but honestly, like I've had a lot of podcasts that have like kicked in and started having more episodes or have kind of come back from a hiatus. But my work has changed some as well. Whereas I was working either in my office or in a different place, and I could pretty much put my headphones in and just crank through stuff. That hasn't been the case. I've been running all over campus, changing around stuff, and I can't just keep headphones in all the time. So the only thing I've gotten through is I've gotten through another book, or I'm about halfway through another book in the Not Alone series by Craig A. Falconer. I think I'm also kind of hitting a wall where I'm just like, there's a lot of politics in these books, along with all the alien stuff, and a lot of, I think I'm just to the part, I don't know if it's just because of the current situation in the world, or if I'm just like, can we cut the politics and fucking just get stuff done? Like, can we do that? That would be nice. But the whole point of the book is the politics that would go along with, is there an alien race? There is an alien race. Well, how do we handle that? And everything that would go forward with it. So it is core to the story. I'm enjoying it. It's just, I think I need a break to be able to come back and go, okay, I can do this again. And who knows, maybe after November would be a good time to do that, at least here in the U.S. So, yeah, kind of getting tired of the politics stuff. So
I have to say, podcasts have really been like moving in on my audiobooks time as well, because there's just so many shows I want to listen to, and I'm trying to stay current on a lot of stuff happening. And yeah, it's hard when you've got like 5 or 6 hours a week of audiobooks, and then you've got, or a podcast, and then you've also got a book you want to listen to, and music occasionally,
Music, what's that?
My audio input is just overwhelmed sometimes.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like I said, some of the shows have either, like, literally there have been 2 podcasts that have been in hiatus for 2 and 3 years that because of COVID, it's like, well, let's start this back up. And I'm extremely happy that they've come back. But it's just like, wow, so now I've got even more to listen to. So I totally get that, Jen. So, well, that is our show for the month, ladies and gentlemen. If you would please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Music. We are also available on Amazon Music as well. They have a podcast. They are doing podcast over there as well. So if that's how you're going to listen to your stuff, go find us over there as well. So we've got all the shows are up there and are current. So you can go check us out there if you want to. You can find us at epicallygeeky.com. There you can find links to everything, including the social network stuff, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And then we do have a couple of Etsy stores on there. My Etsy store, I have finally cranked it back up. So I'm slowly but surely starting to crank out 3D printed items again. And I think Ray's still got a couple of things on his.
I have one skateboard I think I have listed right now. So
good deal.
It's there. And then spoiler alert for the next Creatively Geeky. A painting has begun. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good deal. So you can check out all the other shows and everything else we do over there. So, where can we find you online, Jen?
You can find me here on this is Marginally Geeky, Epically Geeky, Creatively Geeky, and I host Sustainably Geeky. And you can also find me on medias at Head's Gonna Be Me.
Ray, where can we find you online?
You can find me on the Reluctant Yeti on Instagram. Sometimes Twitter, although I'm trying to get off that one because there's a lot of
toxic
stuff going on. So it's but yeah, find me on that and the shows that were mentioned, as well as Procrastinators. At some point, we'll figure that out.
Yeah, I need to bring that up again. No, I haven't played the game yet.
No, I'm saying you'll get to it tomorrow.
We'll get to it tomorrow. Yes, maybe. So yeah, or the day after, that. And as always, you can follow my individual wacky adventure online at Optimus Gene on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. For everyone on the site, have a good night.